For the Shaking Through sessions, this is probably the most heavily affected song we've done yet. We really just took advantage of the fact that there wasn't much in it instrumentation-wise, so we just, we filled up the rest of that space with swirling guitar amp-driven reverbs and using a lot of guitar pedals and things like that. So it's not about the actual instruments so much as it is the grand overall effect.
The song starts with a core set of instruments. The drum kit, which was very minimal, played by Brian. Then there was a bass synth played by Glenn, and Mike did a scratch guitar take and scratch vocal take. And the nuts and the bolts of the song are really in there.
We put a lot of time into the vocals, so Mike's vocal and Marissa's vocal. And then we sort of filled out the rest of the space with some really ambient synths and vibraphones.
So preach from that mountain slow. I'll be on the path below.
Mike had probably the brightest voice I've ever recorded. We were recording it with the Neumann U67, and we ran it through the Manley Massive Passive to cut high end. I think we probably cut 12K about 6 or 8 dB. I mean, it was a huge amount, and it was still something we had to cut further in the later stages. You should step off the mic for these, like, another foot.
Okay. So, like,
yeah.
Here?
Yeah, and you might want to sing, like, to the left or right of the mic, so like that. Let's see what that sounds like. Can you just do that right now? Woo! Can I see what it sounds like if you're really far away?
Mike did some passes where he was singing directly on access to the U67, but then as we began to double them, we had him sing off axis. We had him move out into the room a little bit.
We also wanted the ooze to really soar in the song, so it made sense to have him drop back, a good 6 or 8 feet off of the mic and just sort of fill the room with those ooze, heavily compress that sound so you really hear the ambience. So after we got through the vocals, we basically figured we were going to do a couple more sort of ambient synth tracks with Glenn. So it sort of just dawned on me that maybe we should, start printing like our crazy effects ideas that we would ultimately use in the mix as he was performing.
Up there, I think sounds a little bit better. Cool. Some more up here.
What happens if you don't play triads? It's running through the space echo and the memory man and the polychorus, and I'm kind of manipulating them as he's playing. And it's also cool because he's hearing what I'm doing, and if you do it right, they hear like this move that they make cascade down into like this like crazy vortex of the space-time continuum, and it gets people psyched.
Oh, man. I am.
We had Glenn set up in the isolation room, and then we mic'd it up with a pair of Neumann KM184s in an XY pattern, but spaced across the span of the vibes. From there, it ran into the Pacificas and a pair of distressors, and immediately was being routed back out to the amps for effects.
It's reverb when you're not listening closely, but if you open up the stems to that recording and you just listen to the printed effects tracks, you hear things bending in and out of focus. You hear like that it's a really surrealized thing. And I'm just really into that right now. I come away with this with the real appreciation for the open-mindedness of everybody involved, I think there's a lot of forces at play in the world right now that it's kind of with like the digital movement and everything that it's about. It sort of carries along with it this like sort of hyper obsession with clarity. And I hate that. I'm not about that at all anymore, you know? It's a wonderful thing that you know, Mike and Marissa are open to the fact that I want to go in the opposite direction of that, you know? And that they sort of indulge me and that it gets to be what it is. Maybe in 5 years we'll listen back and be like, what were we thinking, you know? But so what? It's now, and we're liking it.